The era of James Bond computer games, published by Domark, continues on after the releases of A View to a Kill and The Living Daylights. Domark would go on to publish 6 total Bond games between 1985 and 1993, and their third entry was A Return to the Past. Both of their first 2 entries were released in the same year as the corresponding films, but 1988 was a year off for the franchise, at least in terms of film releases. Live and Let Die, the computer game, was released on October 20th, 1988 for the usual Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64, and ZX Spectrum, but also some newer models, the Amiga, which was a more advanced Commodore computer, and the Atari ST, which was the successor to the Atari 8-bit systems. 1988 was a huge year for video gaming, and it was the year of sequels for Nintendo, as some titles released were Zelda 2, Mega Man 2, Super Mario Bros. 2 in the US, just to name a few, and it was the year that started the John Madden football line that is still continuing annually today. So how was the Bond franchise competing with their computer line? Timothy Dalton was still Bond and would be for one more film, but Domark chose to go back to the Roger Moore era, and it was sort of by accident. Domark was developing a speedboat racing game entitled Aqua Blast, completely as its own thing, but realized the game had a look similar to the speedboat chase that was in the film Live and Let Die. They apparently decided to throw a few Bond branded items in there instead, and BAM! They had their next Bond game by happenstance. And I've never played it, but apparently this game is very similar to one released by the same team 3 years earlier called Buggy Boy. Live and Let Die was Ian Fleming's second novel and was released in 1954. It tells the story of Bond being sent to America, specifically Harlem and Florida, along with Felix Leiter to investigate a criminal mastermind named Mr. Big. It wasn't made into film until 1973 as the 8th Bond adventure and the first to star Roger Moore, now taking over for Sean Connery officially. Financially, Live and Let Die falls right in the middle for the franchise as the 14th highest grossing in the series adjusted for inflation. But rather than making a game that follows the events of the film, this game only focuses on one action scene involving a speedboat chase through Louisiana. While iconic, the scene of the film itself lasts roughly 12 minutes, less than 10% of the runtime. Calling the game Live and Let Die can be a bit misleading, but at least the cover does show Bond in a speedboat. Let's check out the back of the box. M has given you the top secret mission. Find Mr. Big and don't come back until you do. Q has given you his latest gadget. Be very careful with it, 007. It is the fastest and most dangerous speedboat ever made. Just to make sure you find Mr. Big, we have arranged some practice sessions for you in extreme conditions. You'll go from the desert to the icebergs before we let you loose in Florida, Mr. Big's home country. Good luck, 007. So if this game is supposed to be based on the movie, there's so much wrong here. Bond is only ever in a speedboat because he finds one at random just so he can escape an alligator farm. He was never given one by Q, and he was certainly not able to have practice sessions. Also, the chase took place in Louisiana, not Florida. Bond does go to Florida in the book, but the back of the box shows Sheriff J.W. Pepper, the infamous Louisiana cop in the film. I know I'm probably looking too far into this, it's just a simple boat racing game that happened by accident, but I can't help but feel the game is very misleading, especially if you were to purchase it back when it came out without knowing anything about it, given that the last 2 Domark games at least tried to follow the structure of the films they were based on. Speaking of Sheriff J.W. Pepper, he's this bumbling, most likely racist, stereotypical Southern cop that gets tangled up in the boat chase, and was supposed to be seen as comic relief for the film. Whether you like him or not, they decided to make a cartoon version of him complete with a comic book speech bubble for the back of the box as well, in his unique way of speaking. He's pretty out of place in the film, and he's out of place for this game as well. But okay, let's actually check out the game itself. Like with The Living Daylights, there's no Bond theme, just some generic 8-bit music over a title. You are then given your mission select. 3 of them are practice missions, and New Orleans is the only one that's an actual level. Yep, that's correct, this game has 1 level. I guess that weirdly makes sense, as the game is based on one scene from the movie, but okay. The first training course is simple. In your speedboat, you shoot bullets and missiles at red and black targets and not run into them or your boat will explode. You can only go so far based on the width of the river, so the controls are not very effective. You can sort of shoot diagonal, but it's pretty easy to accidentally run into things anyway. There is no ammo limit or fuel here for the first practice session. The other two training courses are the Sahara and the North Pole. So is Bond flying to these places just to race around in a boat that MI6 is apparently sending with him? The Sahara and the North Pole? What is even going on with this game? These play out the same, just with more obstacles to avoid, like rocks and icebergs. You have to run into fuel canisters to refuel, but I thought they were something to shoot at first. Fuel is extremely important because getting to empty is an instant game over. After completing these to your liking, it's then time to tackle the actual game itself, New Orleans. It's just the same thing, only harder. It's very difficult to master and ultimately becomes a lesson in memorization since the course seems to be the same every time. You need to get a lot of points and then you'll see Mr. Big's heroin factory and you shoot it to win the game. Except, I never got to that point because, well, I hate this game. I hate just about everything about it. There isn't even that much to say because it's a one-note game. You drive the boat, you shoot things, you avoid other things, and then you win. The purpose of this retrospective is to showcase the history of these games, their ups and downs, and I really only want to briefly state my opinions near the end and not make it the focus. But this game, firstly, I timed it out. From loading the game to actually getting to the level select screen took 3 minutes and 23 seconds on an emulated Commodore 64. It took 30 seconds just to load the title screen. The Living Daylights wasn't even a great game, but I was longing for it while I was working on this one. At least that had some fun to it. I don't know if this game has its own fanbase out there, but I can't imagine why. I had virtually no fun playing this, and I do not recommend it to anybody. Even the interactive fiction games required some thought to be put into it. This is just a badly controlled boat driving game with iffy turning and hit detection with a misleading title and a story that doesn't even make sense in regards to the film. And guys, New Orleans is not in Florida. God, I can't stand this game. Avoid this one at all costs. Since I played the Commodore 64 version, supposedly the Amiga and Atari ST versions are a lot nicer looking, with the Amstrad and ZX Spectrum ones falling behind. These computers were even getting old by 1988. But these Bond games made by Domark continue on even into the last year of the decade in 1989. Timothy Dalton is around for one more film with License to Kill. In License